Darius Alexander, 3 technique that we did a lot of work on. He came in on a 30 visit as well, was down at the Senior Bowl, and just where we are, we thought we needed to add some youth to the defensive line, and this kid is just under 6'4", 315 pounds, 34-inch arms, and freaky athletic. So down at the Senior Bowl, he had a really good week. And Dre Patterson, I think the world of him, and Brian Cox, and getting a guy like this that can come in and develop with the depth that we have, and again, high ceiling for this player. So we're excited to add another player to our front 7.
How important was that week at the Senior Bowl for you, especially a guy who's coming from a smaller school? Yeah,
he's at Toledo. He's an older kid. He's 24. A little bit of a late bloomer, but yeah, it was really important. And the schemes that they play too. Some of these guys, the defensive linemen, are asked to read and react. They're not always taught to get on edges. It's somewhat of a selfless job at times in there, in terms of the scheme that you're asked to play. So when you see him get in a staggered stance, line up as a 3 technique, and get upfield and use his length, you could really see what this kid would be able to potentially do. So. Yeah, we're excited to work with him.
What do you make of your front 7 now, and kind of that identity you guys have created?
Yeah, there's a lot of depth. I mean, there's a lot of depth there. I'm excited about the group. Again, we got to do a better job, stopping the run this year, and I think we helped out with some of the depth. And then just if we can get to 3rd down, we've got a lot of options in terms of where guys can line up, and versatility. Chauncey's got some versatility. Darius got some versatility. Obviously with Carter, who there's some versatile pieces in there that can move around, and that can be difficult for offenses. So I'm excited about the group. We'll see how they all come together, but we've got, again, Andre Patterson and Brian Cox, I think a lot of, and they're going to have some really good depth and competition in the front 7.
When you go for a guy like this at this particular position, you have Dexter there, so you guys start thinking who is going to complement him, because he's going to be there.
Yeah, exactly. We always talk about 4 hands. Oftentimes there's 4 hands on Dexter Lawrence. So if you can get somebody on the opposite side of Dexter that can win one-on-ones, or that's going to see a lot of one-on-ones, and has the ability to win those matchups consistently, then that makes it difficult as well.
You added a lot to the front 7. Even Abdul, you're talking about Roy Robertson, Harris, Ledbetter, Golston. How important was that to you to sort of rebuild that unit as a whole?
Yeah, it was important, and we didn't come in today saying, hey, we have to have a 3 technique, but we went with the board. We went how we saw it, but it was important, not just stopping the run, but getting after the passer. And again, we talked about an identity a little bit last night with Carter. So again, I like what we've done on defense, and again, I can't say we went in today like this is what we were looking for. We let the board talk to us.
Going into the offseason, you say, hey, this is something we have to just rebuild.
Yeah. Yeah, especially our depth, because late in the season when the injuries occurred, and outside backer and inside, we had some guys in there that were battling and did a really good job for us. But we just thought, upgrading the depth, adding some youth, would be really beneficial.
Brian, the biggest story in the league right now is that Shedeur Sanders is still available. There was a report from Todd McShay that specifically you and him had a meeting that did not go very well. Anything you want to clear up on that, or deny or comment on?
Yeah, I'd say we had good meetings with all the guys that came in here on 30 visits. Quarterback meetings were productive, and we're happy with Jackson. Just to go back on Darius, though, Dan, with your, that Senior Bowl is important for us. It's the first time that some of the coaches go down. I go down every year with Joe. It's it's something that's kind of gets the process going. We met with some quarterbacks down there. We met with a variety of people, and you're able to get some guys ahead of, say, the combine, and see them do some different things. And he did a nice job there with some of the things that they asked him to do. So it's a very helpful part of the process.
Is it important for a smaller school guy, smaller program guy at the Senior Bowl to show that he can kind of measure up and kind of get into that next group of players that you're considering when the evaluation moves along?
Yeah, I mean, again, for me, it's just, I always like going down and you'd like not to go down. You'd like to be playing at that time, but if not, I think it's just for me, it's a good introductory phase, and the players that do participate, in that bowl game is, it's very helpful for them, I think, but it's really helpful for me. But small school, maybe a guy that they haven't seen as much. You know, it's a good start of the process.
I would say a good example is that North Dakota State kid. I mean, I think he was in the top 15, the Zabel kid. You know, I mean, that really helped him down there. I mean, he showed versatility and, you know, went against better competition and held his own, did a good job.
Did Alexander look like a guy that if you didn't know where he was from, that he would be in a Power Conference?
Yeah, he really did. He really, and you could talk to him about it, but, you know, he had chances to leave Toledo, and he was loyal to him. So, you know, that says something, too.
Joe, do you think Shedeur is a better player than his slide suggests so far? Just league wide,
Yeah.
a lot of work on him.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into, you know, this is Darius's press conference and, you know, the New York Giants, so we can talk about that if you want, but I don't want to talk about any other players.
Guys, obviously yesterday we're thrilled to trade up and get Jackson, knowing that today you have a wait.
Yeah.
For both of you, was it, you know, you get here, I'm sure, the normal time, and the draft starts at normal time, and you know you'd have to wait to 65. Is that, as much as you like what you did yesterday, is it hard to watch them bing, come off the board?
Yeah, it is. You know, at 34 today would have been really hard. You know, just looking at it, we're like, man, if we were picking, boy, this would be really tough. This would be a tough decision if we still had the 34th pick, because there were quite a few players up there that we liked, and then, you know, as you went through the day, there ended up being, you know, it was a choice between a couple players that we liked. So now what we do is we go and we hope that, you know, some of those guys we like continue to fall. So, yeah, it was a long, whatever it was, a couple hours, you know, waiting to pick. So, yeah, it can be painful sometimes watching that.
Joe, do you mind?
Joe, is this another example of, I think he came on a 30 visit, Darius?
He did.
Is this another example of whatever you were able to gather from that visit?
Yeah, and again, we met with him at the Senior Bowl initially, and they do a great job down there of allotting us time, and, you know, we have a good process at the Senior Bowl in terms of how we set up what we do, and, you know, I think, again, Dave's staff, you know, the fact that those guys are willing to come down on off week and help out when they do. So, again, maybe there's a trend, these 30 visits that we take, but, you know, I'd rather be, you know, accurate with the information that we have and really get to know the players and know if they fit or don't fit versus, you know, trying to play a game or not getting all the information and missing on, you know, character or something like that.
How do you look at a guy at this position when 24 years old? Do you look at age there? Does it matter? Does it mean a ton to you? Do you have to view them differently?
Yeah, not really. He's a little, you know, why is he that old? What, you know, again, and we're still coming out of the COVID stage and some of that stuff. So, you look at that, you look at the durability, you know, what's the mileage on the player, and then, you know, if the medical's fine and there's really no concerns, then you're okay with him. And again, at his age, coming from the school he's at with, you know, my faith and, you know, the coaches that he's going to come to and the veterans that are in that room, you know, somebody like this can really flourish in that room.
Do you look at it differently by position at all? I mean, like Tyler Shuck was the guy that was drafted today. Obviously, older doesn't matter by position. Yeah. Do you look at it as like, oh, yeah, maybe a 24, 25-year-old guy should dominate if he's playing against 19-year-olds?
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying, but that doesn't affect us, you know, whether we draft them or not. You know, it's they're that age, why are that age? And again, we're coming out of the COVID, where, you know, some people had the 6 years, but yeah, you do look at that and you assess it, and then that's where, you know, the Senior Bowl versus different competition. You have to look at the scheme too. You know, I think you really have to understand what the school and the staff is asking the player to do, and then, you know, how will that translate to what you're going to ask them to do. So.
Joe, Abdul said that, you know, he's ready to go. You said last night you guys are good with his foot, but do you have to manage that at all? You have like a plan to? Because I don't know exactly what the extent of it is. I know what you've heard from your doctor. It's just like, how are you going to approach that with him?
Yeah, he's good to go. I asked him, I think it was Sunday or Monday, and I said, hey, if you're going to be working out, can you just send me something? You know, let me know you can run or jump or something. So he was home in Philly, and he's running up a hill. Like, the grass is probably this high, but he's sprinting up this hill. And then he's doing linebacker drill, shuffle, runs up the hill. And then the last video clip, he looks at me, and he points at me, and then he does a standing backflip. So I was like, foot looks good. Foot looks good. So, yeah, I don't have any concern right now. We'll see when the volume picks up and the load, you know. But he's good to go. He has zero pain in the foot. So, you know, we feel good about it. Our medical staff feels good about it.
But we you know, just whether it's Abdul or some of these other draft picks, I'd say we have conversations and account for that, Dan, leading up to rookie minicamp. And some of the, you know, draft picks will just do individual drills, not much team. They won't do team. They won't do 7-on-7. quarterback will probably do it just because there's no rush. But the running and, these guys that have been on visits, we've talked about this before, and they're traveling and they're trying to get a workout in the hotel, and they're not really properly, working out for football. It's through no fault of their own. So, we have, I'd say, significant conversations each year leading up to rookie minicamp, and then the plan for these guys to get them implemented into our program. We'll have a specific plan for those guys.
Last year you had a lot of young players, rookies came in and had to take big roles early on. I'm curious, but it seemed like they were going into rooms that were relatively young, or some guys that were veterans. My point with Alexander is when you meet with him, is personality also part of it, knowing that you're putting him in a room where there are going to be a lot of big personalities, a lot of experienced guys, and how is he going to fit? How he's going to fit physically, but also how is he going to fit,
Sure.
emotionally, personality-wise?
Yeah, I think that it's always important if you can have some veterans on the team that are good leaders, that have played a lot of football. And in the defensive line, we certainly have that. And then add Dre and Cox to that, two veteran coaches that have a lot of intel to give those guys and information and technique, and two very good football coaches. And then Dex and Notch and all those guys that are. That's a good room in terms of leadership, veteran leadership on our team, and we don't have that at every spot. We're working on some of that. We got it, tight end with Manhurts and Devin, Motor, Singletary at the running back spot, and our secondary is pretty young. They're pretty young there, and then Bobby's a vet, board. So we got some guys, and then the line room, offensive line, we got some vets. So you get some vets that you know they can do a good job of showing those guys how to be pros, and then try to infuse talent with young guys that are smart, that are tough, that are eager to learn, that love the game of football. That's kind of our approach.